Good evening and welcome back to the Rory Talks Football channel, your daily Arsenal news, updates, debates and my opinions. If you're new to the channel, please do subscribe. Bottom right hand corner, a massive summer still ahead of us as we build up to the start of the season. Through pre-season, we go live for watch-alongs and obviously have lots of debate about the current state of affairs. Today, want to talk about Balogun, want to talk about Thomas Partey. Outgoings are kind of the key to our transfer window at this point now that Declan Rice is officially done. Of course, Timber as well. So I do want to get into that. Welcome to the chat. George, good to see you. I hope you're well. And yeah, I want to talk, basically we've had not a press conference as such, but a big interview with Mikel Arteta out in the US this afternoon. So I want to dig into a few things that he said. Who would you say would be the biggest problem if they got injured next season? That's a very good question. Bukayo Saka, I think, is the answer at the moment. Nathan, Jake, Joel, Sean, good to see you. Yeah, apologies, I was away for another couple of days. I was actually on another stag do. Same stag, different location. And equally brutal. So we are back now. We're raring to go. 5-a-side tonight. Against a new team as well. So another new team. Gonna have to show them what it's like to come up against my team. Mustafa, good to see you. Deadpool as well. So on following Balogun, Arteta actually today, in that interview I was just talking about, he said that we have to think about what is best to do with Balogun. We want to see him. We want to experience him in the next few games. So he did allude to the fact that we may well see a lot of following Balogun in the few preseason games out on the tour of the US because we want to see, what he can offer. And look, as much as I kind of took the piss out of it a little bit, the sitter that he missed in the game against Nuremberg, I can see them, Ross. Good to see you. Good to see you, Ross. Yeah, as much as I took the piss out of that sitter, to be fair, the actual movement in the lead up to that chance, the way he burst through with that power and pace and took it around the keeper so easily, does show a slightly unique part of his game compared to the other strikers in our team. Just that extra bit of pace and power that I don't think Nketiah or Jesus have. And so it's an interesting one. Like, I keep sort of tossing and turning on what I want and think about following Balogun and what he should do. By the way, if you're watching on TikTok and you want to get involved in the chat, the YouTube link is in my bio if you want to head over to the YouTube chat. Ibrahim, I'm good, thank you. Adam, Dominic as well, good to see you. So yeah, I keep tossing and turning with Balogun. Should we sell him? Should we keep him? I do have slight issues with his personality, but that, for the right players with the right ability, you can get over, a personality not being great. And I also think, like, you never truly know how, when it comes to attitudes and personalities, right, a lot of it is dictated by the social media team that they have around them. And I feel like potentially a lot of players might also demonstrate a similar attitude to following Balogun on social media if there weren't other people doing it for them. So I don't really want to criticise them too much for that anyway. But ultimately, what I will say is this. The sort of money that we're hearing about being bid for Balogun is not enough. Plain and simply. So this came from The Athletic today. An offer of 40 million euros is expected to arrive soon at the Emirates from Inter Milan for following Balogun. Inter Milan are interested in signing Balogun and talks have been taking place with his representatives. Although there's been no club-to-club offer as yet, a bid of around 40 million euros is expected to arrive. Arsenal are believed to value him at £50 million. So 40 million euros is about 34 million quid. And honestly, I think that's a bit of a joke. And I know, look, we've been accused of making, lowball offers for Declan Rice. And then, it's not embarrassing as such, but I do think it's a bit of a joke. When you look at the prices of young strikers at his level around Europe and what they go for, 34 million quid is not even close. You talk about Rasmus Højlund, potentially moving from Atalanta to Man United. Atalanta are asking for 70 million euros for him. This is a guy that scored 9 goals in Serie A last season. Like, don't get me wrong, I rate Højlund massively. I think he's got a massive ceiling. But he scored 9 goals in Serie A last season. How are we valuing Balogun at nearly half of that? Or, sorry, how are Inter Milan valuing Balogun at nearly half of that? I think it's ridiculous. And for that money, absolutely not. Absolutely not. No way should we be selling him for that money. It's just not worth it because it has the potential to come back and massively bite you. Like genuinely, you could sell him to Inter for that, and they could double their money in a year if he fulfills the sort of potential that I think he's got. They could double their money, and we would look like absolute mugs. So I think the lowest really you can look at letting him go for is 40 to 45 million pounds. But even if you do that, that deal needs to have so many clauses. It needs to have a buyback clause. It needs to have a sell-on clause. It needs to be claused up to the eyeballs if you're going to let him go for that sort of money, just to avoid any embarrassing situations further down the line where ultimately you've let go of a serious player. And I also just think, like, Serie A clubs annoy me, I'll be honest, because they demand ridiculous money for the players that they sell, and then they offer peanuts for the players that they buy. Inter Milan have just sold Onana for, what, 55 million euros? I just feel like it's almost it's a joke to be offering then 40 million euros for someone like Balogun. And you know for a fact, if Inter Milan were selling Balogun, they'd be asking for 70, 80 million euros for him. Here we go, Cedric not on the US tour. Yeah, I'm going to talk about the squad for the tour and what it means and why some players have gone and some players haven't. I do think some of it's quite interesting. I think some people have interpreted some of the things wrong, potentially, in terms of some players are going and people think that means they're staying at the club. I don't necessarily think it does. We will get onto that. Exclusive, Cedric is not going to the States. Source, Eric Ten Hag's hair. Would you rather keep Eddie or Balogun? Personally, I still think I'd rather keep Balogun. And that's not a slight on Eddie, and I think Eddie's attitude is fantastic. But in terms of who would I want playing, I think it would be Balogun, truthfully. And as neither of them are going to be the first choice striker next season, I think you've got license to gamble a bit on Balogun and his attitude coming good. Whereas I kind of feel like we've probably seen the best of what we're going to get from Eddie. Which, look, Eddie is a very good player, and it's unfortunate. I forgot to tweet that I'm live. My bad. It's unfortunate, that I just think we have to kick up a gear now. We have to kick up a gear. And if Jesus, for example, was to get injured for a period of time, Eddie has proven himself in the Prem. I don't think he has, truthfully. I know he did well. I know he filled in for Jesus well. But for me, it just wasn't quite well enough. It is my personal opinion on it. Which, look, if you disagree, then that's fair play. But that was my personal opinion. You've invented this idea that Balogun has a bad attitude to protect his value. Balogun, if he wasn't to be sold, needs to sign at least a one-year deal. I don't think I've invented the idea that Balogun has a bad attitude. I think he has done some things that they just don't give off a great image. Is all. Which, look, in some ways I like the fact that he's got a lot of confidence. I just feel like there comes a point in his career where he would maybe regret leaving Arsenal instead of giving it another year or two and seeing how things play out. I think what happened with Saliba. A lot of us thought that Saliba was really angry with the club for sending him on loan for 2 seasons, but it worked out perfectly. Sad that Walters and Nwaneri aren't going. They really impressed me at the under-18 final. Yeah, I will talk about that. I will talk about that. But I do want to talk about Partey. So that's Balogun. So because these are the 2 major outgoings, effectively, and these are the 2 outgoings that, if they happen, are going to fund any potential big move or big player that we can bring in towards the end of the window. So with Thomas Partey, obviously there's a tricky thing at the moment where he's not gone on the tour yet. He's probably going on tour next week. A potential reason for that is that the Premier League player that's been involved in this ongoing investigation has a hearing tomorrow, a bail hearing tomorrow, and the outcome of that bail hearing will be quite significant. Effectively, I believe that hearing tomorrow will either result in the case being dropped or the player officially being charged. Basically, bail has been extended so many times they can't extend it anymore. So look, the outcome of that is going to be quite huge, I think. If he gets charged, then that changes everything. If it's him, obviously. But so that's one thing. In terms of the offers, it's seeming more likely. I think Kaya Kainak maybe, or Connor Hum said this morning that Arteta is getting closer and closer to a move away from the club. And that will probably be to Saudi. Because I just don't think anyone else in Europe is going to offer enough money for us to let him go. And there were some reports over the weekend that Partey has now accepted some terms from Saudi Arabia. But again, you know, for me, with Thomas Partey, you're looking at it's got to be a minimum of 40 million quid, especially when you see Fabinho's just gone for 40 million quid. There's no reason that Partey shouldn't be going for that or more. Arteta isn't leaving, Ibrahim, no. And the thing with Partey for me, right, is that really I would only want Partey to go if we were bringing in Caicedo or Tchouaméni. Saudi don't also care as much with his charges. Potentially Dominic, but it's whether or not if he was to be officially charged, I don't think he'd be allowed to leave the country. Is the problem. The reason he's been able to go on tours and stuff abroad so far, I believe, is because he's not actually been charged with anything. But yeah, I think with him, for me, unless you're bringing in a Tchouaméni or a Caicedo, next season, we're worse off without him than we are with him. Even if you bring in Lavia, who I rate massively and I think has a massively high ceiling, I don't think Romeo Lavia is good enough right now to replace Thomas Partey next season. The ideal is that you have a crossover year. You have a year where you've got both of them. And then you can let Partey go. And that might cost you a bit of money, but I think it'd be worth it. Rory, has Partey stayed back to give Smith Rowe company on the flight to America next week? That's not the reason that he stayed back, no. Smith Rowe's having a break. Smith Rowe's having a break for a week, and then he'll join up. And Partey will hopefully join up, assuming that everything goes well tomorrow. What about Gravenberch? Gravenberch is an option, but I don't think he's good enough. Like, I am talking like top level. I think people forget how good Thomas Partey was for the first 70% of last season. Like, there genuinely will be a massive drop-off if you don't have Thomas Partey in the team from last season. And, you know, do you think Rice is an upgrade on Partey? Well, this is the thing, right? So you could say, fine, bring in Rice replaces Partey. But then, I don't think Rice and Havertz really is a massive upgrade on Partey and Xhaka from last season. That's my concern, especially until Havertz has figured out how to play at Arsenal. So I just don't. And then you've also got the problem of depth. Then you've got the problem that especially if Declan Rice gets injured, our midfield is weaker next season than it was this season. If you haven't got Partey and Rice gets injured, you've got real problems. Now, Rice's injury history is really good, but it is something I worry about. It is something I worry about quite massively. If we keep Partey, do you play Partey 6 with Rice 8 and Havertz on the bench, or do you bench Partey? Well, this is the thing. For me, I think for a lot of games... At first, I thought just for the games... For the difficult games against good midfields and teams that can press well, I think you have to play Partey, Rice and Ødegaard. I think that's the best midfield you can play. I think in easier games, you probably want a more creative and progressive 8 in Kai Havertz, and then you have either Rice or Partey as the 6. Again, there will be games probably where Declan Rice needs a break. He has played pretty much every game every time for West Ham, but it's a higher level now. Losing both Xhaka and Partey in one window will be so risky. This is the thing. Losing, Arsenal arguably had the second best midfield in the league last season. Losing 2/3 of that midfield is massively risky. And I just don't think we need to take the risk. I really don't think we need to take the risk. So for me, unless you really do get a properly good offer for Thomas Partey, and you can use that money in this window to bring in a replacement that is good enough, I just don't think it's worth it. I really just don't think it's worth it. And in some ways, I look at players like... Zakaria, or Zakaria, I never know how to pronounce it. I look at someone like that and I genuinely think he'd be a better option than Lavia for one season. And obviously would be a lot cheaper. But again, you could just bring him in alongside Thomas Partey. So it's a difficult one. No worries, Leo the Gooner. Good to see you. People are forgetting Jorginho. This man can play the 6 and the 8 as a backup. Jorginho can't play the 8, I don't think. But you're right in terms of he can play the 6 to a very good standard. But again, we had him in the second half of last season, and it didn't stop us falling apart quite badly. So I just think, I don't know. I just don't. If we go into next season without the depth, like the biggest issue with our midfield last season was the depth. It was why we brought in Jorginho. It was why we wanted Caicedo in January. And I just feel like if you lose Xhaka and Partey, even bringing in Declan Rice, and even potentially someone like Romeo Lavia, you've still not really improved the depth from the end of last season. George has 0 legs to play the 8. Yeah, I don't think Jorginho can play the 8 personally. What do you think of Xavi Simons going back to PSG? Yeah, I wanted to talk about this. I was going to move on to basically, who do we sign next? If we bring someone in, who do we sign next? And the reason is, again, in that Arteta interview, he said, he was asked about if we'd make more signings. And he said, we'll be alert. There's a lot of time still in the market. We'll have to see how things develop in the next couple of weeks. There's still time to do things for exits as well. So clearly he wanted to kind of enforce the point that there's still time to shed some players, because we do have a swollen squad at this point. But in terms of players that we can bring in, we right now we just don't have much money, is the truth. Like we've spent a lot of money. We have, depending on outgoings, that's going to be how much we can spend. I think if you bring in 80 million for Balogun and Partey, for example, you can spend 80 million. I do think we're at that point, which is difficult. Simons was potentially could have been a great option because of how cheap he would be. He's going back to PSG, which, look, I really just don't think that's a great move for his career, but who am I to question it? It's a shame. It is a shame. So that's basically him and Arda Güler gone now, which were two of my preferences. Moussa Diaby, again, it's an expensive option. You need to make probably 50 million quid's worth of sales if you want to bring in Moussa Diaby. And it's I think Saudi, again, are going for him. So potentially he'll be gone to Saudi. And a lot of these players are going to start getting snapped up now, which is why it's important to get the outgoings done soon. I feel like if you get into August, late August, or the second half of August, and you're still looking to bring in players and you're still looking to sell players, it all gets a bit messy. Which is why I think it's so good that we've got what we've done already, done so early in terms of Rice, Havertz and Timber. Did you see Athletic saying Arsenal's persistence for Caicedo has strained relations between the clubs, so it seems Caicedo can't happen? Well, yeah, but look, this is actually a Brighton issue. And I don't sympathise for Chelsea fans, right? Because the Chelsea fan base just absolutely hates me. But Chelsea now are getting the exact same treatment that Arsenal got, and it's Brighton that are the problem. Everyone seems to think that, it's the buying clubs that are the issue, that it was, Arsenal strained the relationship in January. No, Brighton are straining the relationships with these teams. So Orney lied. Well, I'm not saying Ornstein lied. I'm just saying that Brighton need to do a bit of self-reflection and look upon themselves. It sounds like they agreed with Caicedo that if a reasonable fee came in this summer, they'd let him go. They're not doing it. They're now asking for 100 million, which was way more than they even asked for us in January. So I just, Brighton are frustrating, to be honest. I just don't really get, I don't get what they're doing. And look, if our relationship with Brighton is strained because of it, then whatever. There are more players than just at Brighton. And they're going to dig themselves into a hole. Brighton will dig themselves into a hole where people don't want to do business with them, especially if they go back on their word, which it seems like they do. So right now, other than Caicedo anyway, there's no one at Brighton that I want to buy. So it's it is what it is. But I do think. Apparently Chelsea bid 65 million plus 5 million in add-ons for Caicedo, which I do think is less than what he's worth. So, I don't know. It's an open race. Put it this way: if Arsenal go back in for Caicedo and put the money on the table, Brighton will take it. Relationships FC can only get you so far anyway. 40 million plus Balogun for Barella. Sorry. 40 million plus Balogun for Barella. Well, that would mean Barella was worth about 90 million. That's ludicrous. Absolutely not. Barella's a great player, but I'd say a swap deal of Balogun for Barella would be all right. That'd be fair. What do you think of Onana to United? Good signing for them. Really good signing. I think some fans are getting a bit carried away, I feel like, in terms of, you know, Mark Goldbridge, I think, said that Onana could be the best goalkeeper in the Premier League. I think that's a stretch. But he's... For Man United to progress to the next stage, which I think they had to, that, you know, Man United playing the way they played last season are not going to win titles. That's just the way it is. I think to win titles, you have to play the way that City and Arsenal play. Because to be getting those, like, mid to late 90s points tallies, you have to be dominating games. You can't rely on a solid defence and winning games 1-0. So I think it's a great signing for them. It's quite expensive, I feel like. But I think that more shows, you know, what a bargain we got for Aaron Ramsdale when we signed him. Because to get a goalkeeper that's that good and that good with their feet, with the way that teams are sort of moving now, playing out of the back, I do think it's important to have a keeper that can do that. And so, look, it's a good signing for them. I just think they need a striker. I can't believe they haven't signed a striker yet. It's one of those, it's, you know, David De Gea got the Golden Glove last season. I do think that was a position that they needed to improve, but the point is David De Gea got Golden Glove last season. Mason Mount is a good signing, I think. Is it in a position that they massively needed it? Not as much as a striker. I just can't believe that they didn't... You know, we went out and the big position that we had to buy a player for was the midfield. So we went out and got Declan Rice. All right, we ended up getting Havertz and Timber done before it, but it was still always clear that Rice was the absolute #1 priority that we would get done, and we did it. And I can't believe that they haven't gone out and got a striker. Højlund going to be hefty if they do try and get a striker. Yeah, well that's the thing. But Man United have an issue anyway that everyone that they try and negotiate with ends up pulling their pants down. They were negotiating with Inter for Onana for weeks and weeks and weeks and ended up paying what Inter Milan wanted. But that's more of a symptom of the money that they've spent on players in the past. And it takes you a long time to get away from that as well. It does take you a long time to get away from that. Think about the players that we've probably missed out on because we've had to start sticking to our principles and sticking to our, you know, how much we value players at. It's difficult. If we want to sell Balogun, need $80 million. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what the conversion rate is, but I'd probably take it. Would you take Bowen as a backup for Saka? He'd be too expensive. I think the money that you'd pay for Bowen probably wouldn't be worth it in terms of his quality to be a backup for Saka as well. Right, I wanted to talk about this, actually. That was what I wanted to talk about. Let me bring it up. That's the wrong screen. This is the squad. This is the travelling squad going to... well, they're in the US now. And there are some interesting things on there, right? So the first one is down at the bottom. Amario Cozier-Dubry is the only academy player that's gone. And I found that quite interesting. I 100% expected Ruel Walters to be there. Surprised that he wasn't. Now, the reason that I think Nwaneri and Miles Lewis-Skelly isn't there is because they can carry on playing pre-season football in England. I can't remember exactly what it was, but basically they'll still be playing in England. They're only 16. There probably wasn't need for them to go out there. Cozier-Dubry's 18, so he is getting closer to that, you know, adult level football essentially, and he could do with some game time at that level. Walters is the one that surprised me. In terms of other names that have gone, you know, people have been saying, like, why is Runarsson there? Why is Austin Trusty there? Why is Rob Holding there? And the reason is that even though we're looking to sell these players, if you don't take them on tour, similarly to what we've done with Cedric, you're basically saying, look, your career at Arsenal is up. If you don't take them on the tour, they're as good as done. And so the reason that you take players like Holding and Runarsson that we are still looking to get rid of is that you're still showing to the market that they are involved with Arsenal. Because otherwise, clubs will come in and say, you know, in negotiating, they'll say, well, that player is clearly not in your plans, so we're going to pay less for them. So that's the reason that they've gone. The reason that someone like Cedric hasn't gone is because we're not going to get any money for Cedric. We are not going to sell Cedric. The best case scenario is that we tear up his contract or pay him off whatever he's owed on that contract. Similarly with Pepe, I don't think we're going to sell Pepe. We'll end up just having to pay off his contract or terminate it or find a resolution to it. What has happened to Matt Turner? Matt Turner's already out there. He finished the gold, whatever it was. He finished the gold, whatever it was. Again, if you're watching on TikTok and you want to get involved in the YouTube chat, the YouTube link is in my bio. Get over and have a conversation with me. United didn't pay what Inter Milan wanted. They originally asked for 60 million euros. Or what did they pay? 55 million euros. I mean, 5 weeks to save 5 million euros is, questionable. There's a rumour Simons will be loaned out to RB Leipzig. Yeah, I think Simons will get loaned out. Well, Simons get loaned out if Neymar and Mbappe stay at PSG. Can't believe Alex Renarsson's still at our club. Well, that's a questionable one, right? So, Renarsson is still at the club. He is getting sold, but it came out today that Okonkwo is free to be sold at this point. And honestly, from what I've seen, and I haven't seen a crazy amount of any of them, obviously, but from what I've seen of Okonkwo, Hein, and Renarson, I think Okonkwo is the best of the three. So I think it's harsh to let him go, but then you've got to look at the other perspective is, you're a third choice keeper at best at Arsenal, behind Matt Turner, who's probably good enough to play for a handful of Premier League teams as a starting goalkeeper, and then Aaron Ramsdale. And Aaron Ramsdale being so young means the route to the first team as a goalkeeper at Arsenal is basically non-existent, which does make it quite difficult to keep them, but it is what it is. I think Okonkwo will go on to be a very good keeper. As long as we get a good bit of money for him. He's only got a year left on his contract, so we're not going to get much. But what player do you think we should bring in if Partey leaves? Like I said, for me, if Partey leaves this summer, you have to bring in Tchouaméni or Caicedo, and that isn't going to happen. And that's the problem with Partey leaving this summer. Lavia would be the best option that I think is realistic. But I think for next season, in isolation, next season, would I rather have Partey or Lavia? I'd rather have Partey. Now, of course, long term, I'd rather have Lavia. Exceptionally high ceiling, so young. Partey's kind of, I think he's probably at his peak right about now. Last season, I think, was his peak. But he's definitely, if anything, going that way for the rest of his career. The issue is next season in isolation. And again, it's, next season I want to win trophies. I want to win things next season. And, like I said, the ideal situation would be to have Partey and Lavia next season. It's not going to happen because I don't think we have the money to buy Lavia unless we sell Thomas Partey. And we're not going to make that much money in sales. For the amount of players that need to go out the door, we're not going to make much money from them. We're really not. I saw a thing today. Tierney is potentially still available to leave. How much money do you get for Tierney? Because there aren't many teams that sound like they're interested in him or will pay the sort of money that, again, I think we would want for him if we got rid of him. Burnley want Lokonga permanently. Apparently we don't want to lose him permanently. If we can find some sort of resolution for that would be good. But again, that's going to be, any sort of loan with an obligation to buy or whatever. You're not getting that money up front. So it's tricky. Does Smith Rowe play next to Rice? I do think it's an option. I really do think Smith Rowe next to Rice is an option that I would quite like to see tried. We'll see. It'll be interesting to see if we see it at all in pre-season. But I think Tierney still has a place in the squad as a left centre-back. I think it's tricky because realistically, if Tierney's the left centre-back, he's third choice left centre-back behind Kivior and Gabriel. That's the tricky thing for me. And if he's not, then why have you got Kivior? Lokonga won't ever make it, unfortunately. Just take 20 mil and leave. I disagree. I still just have a feeling that there is something in Lokonga. I've seen glimpses of him. Don't get me wrong, he needs to do a lot more. But there are glimpses where you see Sammy Lokonga, and at his age, I don't know. I could see us losing him and then regretting it. But again, that happens at this point, right? When you've got to move players on, it does happen. But I don't know. I'd love to see him do a season at Burnley, and then we'd still have the option. Which I would imagine is why we're not seemingly open to sell him to Burnley permanently right now. Potentially, Arteta still wants to see the same. Sammy doesn't have the minerals. Yeah, but you can develop that, right? After just 2 days in the USA, Arsenal have sold 35 million worth of Declan Rice printed shirts. That's the first payment to West Ham covered. That is true. Unfortunately, I think Adidas get most of that money. Unfortunately, the way it works is that Adidas pay us a load of money to be the sponsor, and then they take most of the money from shirt sales. So, a lot of people hating on Sambi because they've been playing in the number 6 role, which he isn't comfortable in. Well, this is the thing, right? For a long, long time, Sambi Lokonga did not get used well. It's one of the worst things for Sambi Lokonga is that his development at Arsenal was massively stunted by, more often than not, playing in a midfield 2 with El Neni. In not last season, but the season before, he was coming in and he was either playing as a 6 or he was playing as an 8 with El Neni as the 6. So he's very rarely been actually given good opportunities to play in a functioning midfield at its best level. So again, I don't know. It's a tricky one. By the way, Jorginho exists as a good backup to Rice. Jorginho is a good backup to Rice, yeah, I agree. But we had Jorginho in the second half of last season. Did you see West Ham's offer for Paulinho? So hypocritical. Yeah, West Ham are going to get absolutely murdered in the transfer market now. Because of how public it's been that they're getting so much money up front, other clubs are just going to, selling clubs are just going to be like, well, you've got the money in the bank, pay it or don't. They're in such a weak negotiating position. So that's quite funny, Can you answer Nathan's question? He's asked it at least 100 times. Sorry. Do you see Rice playing in the Xhaka role or the Partey role? Both. Both. I think he is good enough to play both. And it depends on whether we've still got Partey, truthfully. But I would love to see Rice played in a more advanced role. I think he has so much technical ability that isn't really ever unlocked at West Ham or with England. I really do want to see him given the chance to play in that more advanced role. We'll see. We'll see. I think, for me, like Partey Rice, Partey, if he's at the level that he was for the first 70% of last season, Declan Rice and Martin Odegaard, you're reaching the same level as Man City at that point. I genuinely think you're reaching the same level as Man City at that point. Why were Arsenal fans annoyed at West Ham for not mentioning them when Rice... Well, I made a tweet about that. I wasn't really annoyed. It was an excuse to have a dig at them and praise Ajax, to be honest. What do you think is the bare minimum for Arsenal next season, success-wise? Bare minimum is being in a title race. And look, I'm not going to say, I've seen so much of this. If Arsenal don't win the Champions League or the Premier League next season, it's a massive failure. I disagree with that for starters, right? We have to be in a title race. We have to get to at least the quarterfinals of the Champions League. And really, I would like to see us win a trophy, either the FA Cup or the League Cup. But we're still competing against the team that won the treble. We're still competing against that City team who are still going to be there. So you could push City all the way in every competition and still just about lose out, and it would be frustrating, but it's difficult. It's difficult. I can't say I expect us to win the league, because how can I say I expect us to win the league against treble winners City, who have got Haaland, who's got a year under his belt in the Premier League, and about to drop 100 mil on Gvardiol. It is, it's tricky. We are competing against one of, if not the best Premier League team in history. As annoying as that is to say it, that's what we're competing against. But we should be in a title race, and that's the key. And we should finish second. We shouldn't finish behind, certainly not United, Chelsea or Tottenham, and probably not Liverpool. I still think Liverpool have a lot of, they've rebuilt the midfield really well, I think, but they still have to make that all gel and work, which should take time. Saliba and Gabi will give City a real challenge. I agree. I do agree. Anyway, it is time for Guess the Gooner, the game where I give you an ex or current Arsenal player's career path, excluding the Arsenal part of it, and you have to guess who that player is. Get it in the YouTube chat. If you're the first person to get it correct in the YouTube chat, you have the immense pride and respect of the Rory Talks Football community and the wider Arsenal community. If you're watching on TikTok and you want to get involved, jump over to the YouTube stream. The link is in my bio. And let's get into Guess the Gooner. I feel bad. I can't remember who actually won the last Guess the Gooner. But we're getting into it. Maybe, was it Ross? Did Ross come back with a win? I can't remember. It is not Chleb. It's not Hleb. Right, this player, ex or current Arsenal player, started their career at Southampton. They went on loan to Middlesbrough. They went on loan to Fulham. And they went to Aston Villa. Southampton, loans to Middlesbrough and Fulham. And then Aston Villa. Who is the player? Who is the player? It is not Oxlade-Chamberlain. It's not Ainsley Maitland-Niles. It is not Walcott. It is indeed. There we go. I've seen the correct answer. Who got it first? It was TikTok Lacazette. The answer was Callum Chambers. And TikTok Lacazette got there first. Jake Madaford came second. 13 Web 13 came third. George Christodoulou came fourth. And Nizar came fifth. But it was indeed Callum Chambers. Congratulations. Lots of people then got it after that. Well done. Well done. It was indeed Callum Chambers. There were some good shouts in there. To be fair, the path of starting at Southampton is a well-trodden path. But it was indeed Callum Chambers. And now, for the Guess the Non-Gooner. This is a player that does not and has not played for Arsenal. I give you their full career path and you have to guess who it is. And you get a good level of respect among the community. I heard Southampton and spammed Ainsley, Ramsey and then Chambers. Yeah, that's how it is. Where can I buy the old list? I got the new one and didn't change to buy the old one. I don't know what that means, unfortunately. I do not know what that means. Anyway, Guess the Non-Gooner. This player started at Figueirense. They went to Tom Bense on loan. They then went to Hoffenheim, Liverpool, and Al Ahly. Figueirense, Tom Bense, Hoffenheim, Liverpool, Al Ahly. Who is the player? Who is the player? And there we go. Max Winfield. Winfield by name, Winfield by nature. Max Winfield has done it. It was Bobby Firmino. It was Bobby Firmino. Do you know what? One of my... Considering how often he used to tear Arsenal apart, I just have always had a bit of a soft spot for Firmino. Just really liked him. Probably my favourite Liverpool player of the last sort of 5 years, I would say. What a player. It was indeed Bobby Firmino. Max Winfield got it first. Deadpool got it second. Dominic Riego third. Jake Madaford fourth. And Nizar was fifth. Congratulations to the two winners. Why is everyone so quick? Jordan, you've got to be fast. You've got to have fast fingers in this game. Because, truthfully, the Rory Talks football community is probably the most intellectual football community in the world. And so you are fighting against some of the steepest competition in the world. I had a gut feeling from the first one. From Callum Chambers. Oh, well, from the Brazilian team. Yeah, fair play. That was good. What will the MLS All-Stars game be streamed on? I'm not actually sure. I think it's free. No, someone said this actually. I think it's on like Paramount or what's the other one? I'll go and find it. At some point. Basically, someone tweeted there's a way you can watch it for free. It's Apple TV, and you can get Apple TV for free for a week if you sign up to like a trial. So basically, you should be able to watch it for free, regardless of whether or not you have Apple TV. So that is where the MLS All-Star game is going to be. What was the path thing? Tom, the path thing is it's a game where I give you... we do this every stream. And it's called Guess the Gooner. There's also a Guess the Non-Gooner. But Guess the Gooner, I give you an ex or current Arsenal player's career path. I take the Arsenal part out of it so you don't know whether they were at Arsenal at the start of their career, at the end of their career, if they're still at Arsenal now. And you have to guess who the player is based on that career path. And then, if you're the winner in the chat. Oh, well, I've just explained it entirely for no reason. But there you go. If you were watching and you didn't know, that is the explanation. The Guess the Gooner today, Tom, was Callum Chambers. It was Callum Chambers. Annoyingly, it's at 1 a.m. Oh, mate, some of the games are ridiculous. The flipping... is it Barcelona? Yeah, the Barcelona game's at 3:30 a.m. I don't know how I'm going to go live for it either. Because my girlfriend will be... Well, she might just be sleeping in the background, I guess. It'll be like a semi-sleep stream. I used my free trials. That's unfortunate. That's unfortunate. Yeah, you can get a free trial with Apple TV. You can get a free trial with Apple TV. Anyway, that is going to be the end of the stream. It's been a good one. I appreciate you all for turning up. I know I was away for a couple of days, but that should be fixed pretty much now, apart from Thursday, maybe. But I do appreciate you all turning up. If you're not subscribed to the channel, please do subscribe to the channel. Smash a like on the stream as well if you've enjoyed it. And other than that, have a fantastic evening. I will be back tomorrow. Yeah, cheers.